Okay, so this is what we're dealing with this morning. Once again, we're doing some faces, and this is again a practice for those of you who want to improve your A game, B game, C game, whatever you're doing at the time. Drawing faces as an exercise will help balance all of the rest of the things you do in the artistic kind of world. You know, I design toys all the time, and a lot of times I get mired down, and whether it's production, whether it's doing concept work, faces are kind of like my neutral zone. If those of you are familiar with Star Trek, that neutral zone is that area between the Romulans and the Federation that is kind of a no-fly zone. It's a buffer zone. And if you choose something as a buffer zone, you can always go back to it, and it improves your drawing skills. And it's, once you start getting into, the, I don't call it minutia, but finer details of doing, the faces as kind of an exercise, then you can really start having some fun with it. It's really just, something that I enjoy overall, as you see, because I do it quite a bit. And, also, I don't know if some of you guys have been on my channel for a while, and you see that I also use animals as kind of my neutral zone. Doing something small every day helps me balance all of the how do I put it, the incredible busyness that is involved in being a freelance contract illustrator, because you're being pulled in so many different directions. A lot of times you got to have something for yourself. I've been working on a children's book for a while. The reason why I haven't gotten it out yet is because of the writing and the complexity of the writing. Once I get the script down, which it's partially done, once I get that down, then I can go into storyboarding. Then I can go into actually creating the book itself, doing a mock-up, doing all the color studies and how it works and flows and stuff like that. And that has taken a while because I haven't treated it like this, a passion project. The book is, to me, a quote-unquote job, and I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't gotten it out yet, is because I've treated it as a job, and I've done tons and tons of artwork for it, but I haven't really wrapped it up per se. And I probably need to kind of switch gears in my brain and get things to where I actually start having fun again with it, like I do with these. So please be patient with me. As an artist, a lot of times I get pulled in so many different directions that I don't even, realize where I am sometimes concerning art. And I'm just like, oh, what do I do? It's like being overwhelmed with everything, but not concentrating on one thing. So then you get nothing done, right? Artists are very famous for doing this. And hopefully I'll be correcting that ASAP. So what am I drawing? Just an old man. Every face that I do has its challenges. Every character that I do has its challenges. Everything that I do has its challenges. And a lot of times whenever I sit down to draw, I think, okay, what am I going to draw today? And even as a professional, I do have those moments, and they come few and far between, when I really don't know what to do, because I'm very easygoing. I don't stress too much about, quote unquote life things. And drawing to me is an outlet. So whenever I sit down to draw, a lot of times I would have already be thinking about what I want to draw. And this is that situation where if I don't have anything to draw, I'm going to land pretty much every single time on faces, characters, or creatures. I love doing creatures. But drawing old people is something that I love to do because, again, you know, it is a challenge, and you have to look at it in terms of how, you know, that particular character, if it's old, how they've aged, where they're from, you know, what I'm trying to portray. And what happens is, as I start placing things on the page, then it really sparks that other side of my my creative brain to start having some fun. So you saw that I started out with a simple shape. I literally blocked in this huge area right here. And, you know, as I progress through, I'm refining line, I'm pushing and pulling just like a piece of silly putty. So if you guys are familiar with silly putty, it's very similar to this stuff right here, or a kneaded eraser. And as I push and pull, right, I'm pushing and pulling, and I'm pulling forms, and I'm pushing forms, and I'm refining and defining as I go through. And this is part of that learning curve, that learning process. And, you know, old people are interesting, older people, because the skeletal structure itself, you think about it and it doesn't change. What does change is all the organic matter that is in between the skeletal structure. So you'll have a vertebrae, right? And the vertebrae is stacked on top of each other. But in between the vertebrae, you have soft tissue. You have the cushion that helps cushion your back, because if it's bone on bone, it ends up causing pain. So what happens as you get older is that cushion shrinks, and you start, you know, you go from standing up straight to kind of leaning over, because you're trying to alleviate the pain that is happening from that bone on bone. The same thing happens in between your joints. You start seeing, instead of this healthy hand, it starts getting arthritic, and you have this pain, and you have these reactions, and you know, your muscle tone goes down. So all these things happen whenever you start getting older. You know, you lose your teeth, and then suddenly you have an overbite, and your jaw and all the tissue in between starts being affected. So these are all the things that I'm thinking of whenever I'm drawing an older character. I'm thinking, you know, first of all, how old, you know, where did they live, and start kind of developing that story in my brain. So eventually you come out with a character that makes sense. Nothing frustrates me more to see character designers that focus on the aesthetic so much more than the story. And even, you know, whenever you're doing simplified stuff like this, it is great practice, and not only great practice, but it is a good thing to always think about story and how you're going to develop the character, right? Okay, so as you see, I have put off doing this other eye because I didn't like how I developed these, because I want this top area right here, and I want that lid to kind of wrap around, and I want this big fat piece right here. Again, I have to think, okay, so that fat piece there, got to be balanced on the other side. And then the baggage underneath the eyes is always a consideration, especially when you do older people, because your body, what it does, as you age, it replicates itself. So, you know, they say you're a completely different person every 10 years of your life, because every cell in your body gets replaced, because your body is constantly replacing cells. Some get damaged, some, you know, just through the aging process, they get replaced. So what happens is your body analyzes a cell, it copies it. Now what happens, every single time you make a copy, you lose a little bit of data. So copy. Now at the end, this end photograph, or this end picture that you've made a copy of the original, this end picture looks different, because through that entire arc of time, you've lost data. And that's what happens with our bodies. You know, that's why, you know, your body loses data, and then suddenly at the end, you look like your former self, but you are a little bit different, right? It's because every cell in your body has been replaced. So just take that into consideration. And I'm not even talking about adding, variables such as living conditions. I'm always a big proponent of using reference as also looking at different shades and facets of life. And yesterday I was perusing through Pinterest, and they had that faces of meth, meth addiction and drug addiction, alcoholism, and you could compare and contrast because they had photos of early people that got photographed, and booked into police custody. And then they had people that were, later on in life had 10 years of alcoholism or meth addiction. And you could see the massive amount of degradation, because what drugs do, and this isn't a stay off of drugs public service announcement, but what drugs do, based upon what I saw, is it inhibits, not only does it destroy your body and bone structure, but it inhibits the copying process. It confuses your body. So your body might copy something, but it's not right because it's been affected by the drugs. And let me tell you, some of the pictures I saw were astounding. People losing their teeth. You could see just their skin was horrible and destroyed. And it was pretty sad to see some of that stuff. So stay off drugs, kids. And that is today's public service announcement. Using a col erase pencil today because what I'm going to do here in a few seconds after I do the second little sketch for you guys is I'm going to do a really quick erase using this black Factus rubber eraser. And then I'm going to come back over it with a pen. And then I got some new markers from Ahuhu. They didn't send these to me. I bought this off of Amazon. And they're flesh tones. Look at that. Really cool. You guys know that I have a marker addiction. Sort of. I don't want to publicly announce that too much because, I still want more markers. It is an ongoing challenge. To find that perfect marker that balances cost with return. Copic markers are wonderful, and I do have other markers that I have in my collection. And I did have recently a couple companies that sent me markers, and I really enjoyed reviewing those a lot. So if you're a marker company and you want me to review your product, I would not say no. Is that bad? I love using markers. Whenever I first started using them, I was kind of trepidatious because, you put your mark down, that's it, baby. But as you get into them, you realize that if you treat it the same way that you do your digital, let's get that lip. Maybe I'll have another tooth come over here. Then you realize how good the markers can be. Yeah. Kind of like, let's give him pointy ear. Let's give this dude a pointy ear. Maybe he's an old ogre dwarf. Ogre elf. I don't know. Okay. So let's do this over here. Now, since this is kind of fleshed out pretty good, what I do is I start going back and I look at the adjustment of forms. I look at placement of items. I look at what I need to do to push and pull the illustration to make more sense. So I'm going to have a wrinkle here, a wrinkle here. A lot of times I like to draw in that ocular cavity to show the placement of the actual eyeball, because then I can judge how far down I need to make the baggage on the eye. This comes around. Okay, this goes around here. Okay, a little bit of an overbite. And I'm going to have this come down because I've got that fat pocket right there. And it helps me to, even in this early stage, to go ahead and draw some lattice lines on some of these forms. Right? It's got these wrinkles that come up and out. This comes up a little bit. And that comes around. Okay. All right. So now we're going to do a little bit younger. A little bit younger and a little bit more brutish, big. Okay, so trying not to hit the camera and make sure that I'm not in the shot too much. Okay. I've got an Apple Watch, and what's really cool is whenever you pair it with your phone, if you see, I don't know if you could see this on previous videos, you actually can see what the camera is seeing, and also you can start and stop the video, and you can take single shots, which is really nice. So if, you know, at any point in time I need to check the lighting, I need to check the position of the camera, I just look over here at my watch, and it makes a huge difference. That's obviously not a plug for Apple products. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew, you know, if you saw me look at my watch, it wasn't because I was trying to get out of here. Okay, so now we're going to do kind of a brutish character. Again, brutish characters have a, I don't want to call it stereotype, it's more like an archetype. Brutish characters, you know, depending on if they're like a Brutus, a bouncer, muscle, you know, they're not there for their quote unquote intelligence. So for an easy read, a lot of times I'll give the brutish character, their features are typically, you know, their eyes are smaller, their chin is bigger, their forehead is, depending on, you know, what I do, their forehead might be a little bit bigger or, excuse me, or smaller. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this one a hat. We'll do that lattice line down the center. And this is the roadmap. You know, we talked about the roadmap. And also, you know, kind of a brow, big brow, you know, and a wide nose that's been broken 100 times because they've been in so many fights. You know, and then the neck. Typically, the neck is huge, obviously because of muscle and just overall mass. And what I'm doing now is I'm mapping out that little roadmap that helps me place things in areas that make the most sense. Okay, so here, it's kind of a quasi 3/4 view. So we're going to have here, and we're going to have that nose come out because it's been broken 100 times, kind of jacked up. We're going to have that brow right here. Okay. Comes up here. All right, so let's go here. Here, gonna have a hat on, so let's have that buckle. Right there. Here. Okay, so now this is a good place because now I start relating stuff to each other. So, you know, I talked about before, you know, that roadmap, getting items in their proper place so you can build your face. I noticed that the nose wasn't big enough, so I'm making a little bit bigger here. Okay. Now the eyes go down slightly. And if you notice, a lot of times I'll put in little lines here and there to help me determine where the inset of certain items are. The outer part of the nostril is the inner part of the eye. And I'm going to have these come down. again, this person has had numerous fights, so I need to take that in consideration, you know. And plus, being a brutish person, it's not going to be really thin, so I need to think of that. And that brow that comes around here is really big. Here. And the corners of the mouth, I'm going to have down here. Have this come up just slightly. Come around. We're going to come down. And it makes a big difference, you know, ethnic-wise. This is probably going to be maybe an African-American character. So certain visual cues that are indicative of, you know, African-American males, you know, the construction, the muscle tone, you know, certain aspects of, you know, same thing happens with, you know, different cultures, different body types, you know, all these things, you know, we identify as African-American, or if we're doing Asian, or, you know, if we're doing African, I always say African-American, what if we're doing just plain old African? You know, the hair is different than other body types, other human types, if that makes sense. Okay, so now we're going to go here. That was one of the really big things that I enjoyed about being in school and having that freedom to experiment, because they would bring in different body types. And I love that. I remember there was this big muscle guy. I forget what his name was. And all the girls would swoon because he was a big muscle guy. And of course, he took his clothes off and, you know, but drawing him was amazing because you could see the musculature on him. And then they would bring in, you know, African-American. They would bring in Asian people. Then they would bring in Latin people, and they would bring in heavyset people and skinny people and old people and young people. And that was great. I think that's great. One of the things that, you know, really makes us, in my opinion, stronger, and some people will disagree with me, is the diversity. You know, it makes us stronger as people, as a human race. You know, I think diversity is wonderful. I live in a place now, unfortunately, that doesn't have a lot of diversity. Here in the mountains, they're really secluded. Let's do that little fat roll right here. And unfortunately, there's some opinions about different cultures and different race here in this place that I live now that isn't very great and positive, because again, that ignorance of other cultures and what they have to offer, sometimes, you know, you look at that and you say, oh, that's different. That's not what I'm used to. That's not a comfort zone. And those things, unfortunately, you know, rear their ugly head. And that's not so much a good thing, right? You know, we do have, as human beings, we as people tend to think that what we are is best, you know, whether it's black, white, green, yellow, orange, purple. We tend to think that what we are is best, and there is no best. There is only diversity. And whether you choose to embrace that is your prerogative. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, you have a lot of people and places, and even in our our history as Americans, we have that that history of not looking at different cultures with an open mind, and that is sucky. My son, I've trained my well, not trained, I've raised my son to be very open and understanding of different cultures and the way they do things. And we came here, and he's like, "Daddy, where's all the?" His first question was, "Where's all the brown people?" Because we came from Orlando, which is a very diverse place. And I said, "Well, son," I said, "this place is up in the mountains, and it hasn't, they've been kind of secluded, and they haven't really broadened their understanding. They're a little bit ignorant of the realities of what a good diverse society can bring you, different foods, different cultures, different things." And I really had to kind of let him know that some of the comments that some of the kids were making was not right. So I love culture. I love different cultures. I love areas. I love the art they produce, and I love all of that. That's who I am as a person, is absorbing different cultures, absorbing different ideas, different ideals, and embracing. If anything, more is better, right? More diversity, more culture. All that is better, in my opinion. Let's do the buckle up here. What I'm doing right now, again, is I'm just mapping out, just making things simple. Let's have that in the fat. From all the times that nose has been broken, he's healed. And then two, in this situation, to show that there's girth on the skeleton, to show that there's meat on these bones, what I'm doing now is I'm literally just going in and kind of thinking, where's the fat laying? Where is the fat going? So you have this cheek that goes up, so I'm just going to pooch out just a little bit more on this side, and this side really pooches up, so we're going to have to curve this a little bit. It's what I talked about, in my earlier videos. Whenever you pinch skin and you pull it and push it, it crimps and you have these wrinkles. So if it pinches this way, you can see it's coming out this way, because that skin has to have somewhere to go. Right? We were in Atlanta last weekend, over the weekend, and we had such an incredible time to go see the Van Gogh experience. I posted a video up of it if you guys are interested. Not a plug. But it was so refreshing because there was diversity there. I'm not saying I'm going to move to Atlanta, because there are so many negatives about it, mainly the traffic. I lived in Orlando for years, and I drove Orlando traffic, and it's horrible. And of course, the price of stuff is expensive there, and all of the I have to do this, I have to do that, I'm so busy. That's one of the reasons why we moved away from the city, is because the fact that I felt like I was constantly going, and the amount of stress that's involved in living in a place like that, you don't realize, because your body adapts to it. I just wasn't, I didn't want to adapt anymore. I wanted to get to a place that, like I am now, that doesn't really have a lot of the stressors. And we got to experience culture again. We went to a place called the Flying Biscuit Cafe. Absolutely awesome. Everybody in there was so freaking nice. And, in today's day and age, with how the media is portraying, race war, there's going to be a race war. I got to be honest with you. We had such a grand experience, and everybody was so freaking nice. You had so many different cultures, even in that particular one area. where we were, and it was just nice. It was so nice, guys. You know, like I said, there's pluses and minuses to living in a place like this. I mean, I live literally in the very north tip of Georgia in the Appalachian Mountains. You know, the Appalachian Trail comes through here. Let's get this fat roll. And, you know, we definitely have to watch our P's and Q's and be careful about what we say, even though this area is rising in terms of popularity. There's still a huge farm community here, and there's a lot of old school thought. And, you know, sometimes it's challenging to hear what some of the people say. But on the other hand, you know, it just takes time. It just takes time to understand, and, you know, getting that judgmental thing out of you. Takes some time. But we had a really good time over in Atlanta. Everybody was awesome. You know, just wonderful. So, big guy. He actually looks kind of like a gentle giant, to be honest with you. So in this situation, what I will typically do is I will grab my pen. Actually, I grab my pencil, and I'll just start refining. Have that head wrap around. Goes here, out a little bit more. Here. I'll take my pencil and I'll refine, and I'll keep refining and eventually land on what I want to ink. Now, I don't want to go too far with the pencils just because time. This is just supposed to be a warm-up for you guys, showing character faces, something that I do all the time. I do have a few extra minutes this morning, which is good. It is Friday. After all, Friday, we love you. And what I can do, just to show you guys in terms of, you know, process and balance, what I'll do right now is I'll go back and I'll see like this area right here that needs to be defined a little bit more. So I'll come back with my pencil and I'll define that shape a little bit better. Right? Maybe shade these in a little bit more. And then if I want to give the character a quote-unquote trait, a character trait, maybe there's a scar, maybe there's a blemish, maybe there's some freckles. I don't know. I haven't decided. So I'm going to have this fat come here. Again, you've got this brow, and I've covered up a lot of that. So I'm going to have, you've got a seam right here. And then you've got a seam that comes here. Seam that comes here. And the eyelets. Little details. So what I can do here is I can just give a little bit of shading. Corners. And this would be a character sketch for something later on. You know, something simple. Let's go ahead and darken these in a little bit. Corners of the mouth. Let's go ahead and get in there and get some of this. Having some fun with it. Yeah, having some fun. There's another fat roll. Diversity. What some people look at as weakness, I view as a strength. Diversity. Different cultures. different historical references, different upbringings. You know, everybody brings different strengths to the table that has the potential to make you better. All right, so what I would typically do is grab one of my, where is that? Where are those pencils? Okay, I've redone my desk recently. So inadvertently, I think I've messed a few things up. So I'll take this of course being my Factus Black 18, and I'll go in and I'll start just lightly getting rid of some of the darker areas of the blue line. I don't want to totally get rid of the sketch because I like it. I like that look. And what it does is there's different types of erasers out there. You have plastic and then you have rubber. This is actually a rubber eraser. I don't know where my plastic erasers are. Plastic being those white erasers that don't really damage the paper. If you push hard enough, eventually you're going to get a little bit of blowback from the rubber eraser. So I do what I can, man. So I notice I need to change a couple things here. Let's go ahead and have this down a little bit. There we go. There we go. I need to have that nose a little bit wider. Gives him more of a, again, that football player, that archetype, that you know, brutish character. So now I've got my pen. Now this is a fine line, and I do have a myriad of different pens that I utilize. As you can see, I've got a couple of pens here and there. These are brush pens. These are fantastic. I get these from Hobby Lobby. They're about $2 a piece. And there's so many different tips that they utilize. One of my faves is right here. Let's put those right. How? Gravity, it's the law. So, let's go ahead and get rid of this one. I got these from... what's that place called? Pens.com? Brushpens.com? I don't know. There we go. How about that? I don't know. These are great. So you see, it is a brush pen, but it's got... I don't know what I could do. It's just go in here. And I can tilt it on its side. And I get wonderful lines. Let's go ahead here. Let's go ahead there. And just, you know, start having some fun with it. You know, having some fun. Let's get this down a little bit. Whoop, whoop. A lot of people are really good inkers, and I'm not a good inker because I get impatient and I think that my line suffers because I want it to be cleaner, but then again, it's not. So it's kind of like the duality of application here. I'm just not a good inker. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. As my Canadian viewers can relate to, sorry. I had a really good friend. He's still a friend. He didn't pass away or anything. He's still a friend. I just don't talk with him anymore because he moved away. He went back. He went back to Canada. And he would say sorry, which is, you know, I think, you know, part of that cultural vernacular accents, and I would always, be taken aback. I'm like, sorry. There's no, why are you saying sorry? But boy, was I in for a shock whenever I moved to the mountains. There's an H. They put H's in places where H's are not. Or they'll accentuate an H. They'll say interesting things like Hoya, like they'll start an actual word that doesn't have an H at the beginning of the word. They'll start it with an H. Like Hoyle barrel, whole barrel. They'll say stuff like that. Or where, there's a, why are you going? It's like there's an H at the beginning of the word where. And the first time I heard it, I'm like, whoa, slow it down. What? But now it's kind of a sound of endearment. It's part of the Appalachian culture. That's part of who they are as people. And, you can judge or you can embrace. And I've chose to embrace. I do tell you one thing. If you come up to the north parts of Georgia and you're expecting to bring all of your political baggage and everything else that you think is going to change the world up here, these people have been living up here forever, and they've raised their families up here, and I've seen it time and time again. You aren't going to change the way they do things up here, and that's probably indicative of everywhere else. Whereas opposed to if you go to the city, you just have to go to a different part of town to find what suits you. Whereas up here, if you don't like it, then oh well. Alrighty. Let's do this. This one. Told you I sucked at ink. It's choosing what line is the best line. I'll be honest with you. I sometimes struggle with that. What line is the best line to tell the best story for this drawing? Sometimes I don't know. That's why you draw all the time. To get rid of that ambiguity and that variable of I don't know. I remember I had a teacher in college, and he was a piece of work. Oh man, he was a piece of work. I wanted to have an explicative in there with numerous adjectives. But he was definitely a piece of work. And one of the things he didn't like to hear was I don't know. Similar to, for those of you who grew up on Nickelodeon, if you used to say I don't know on You Can't Do That on Television, what did you get? You got slimed. And the I don't know was something that he didn't, even if you had to BS it, Bullstein it, he would rather you Bullstein it because that shows a level of creativity than you to say, I don't know. I don't know is the ignorant man's way of answering a question. If you BS it, then that shows a level of creativity to get out of the situation. And he loved that. He would put you in situations and he'd be like, you know, where did you get this reference? Because it looks very familiar. And what were you thinking at the time when you illustrated this? And, you know, this looks neoclassic. And he would throw some weird term, or he would invent an art term. And of course, being students, you think it's correct and then you want to use it. Like neo-fidgetism. This reminds me of the neo-fidgetism era of the 1920s. It was an era that only happened in a 3-week period in a very small sect of London. And this is very indicative, and he would make it up. And, you know, if you could, quote unquote, defend your piece in such a way that made sense, or you could explain it, then it was always better than saying, I don't know. Because I don't know, again, is that terrible phrase that we use to kind of just give up. I don't know. It kind of shows, to him, it showed a lack of creativity. So, all right, so what I'm doing now is just putting in some of those lines that help the piece, or at least I think they help the piece. I don't really know. You like that? Just kidding. Yes. To help the piece overall. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of the other brush markers. This is pretty good. I like this one. This one's nice. It's kind of a brush marker. Kind of a soft... No, we're not doing that one. That one sucketh. Okay. One of the other... Where is it at? Is it this one? No, I like these. These are good, good, good. These are good. What is this? Okay, this is pretty good. I haven't used these in a while, so as you see, some of them are dead. They're dead. They've died. Actually, a lot of them have died. No! There we go. Here's a good one. Actually, it's got a little burr on the end, so it gives kind of a duality of line. What I'm doing now is I'm boosting up the line weight in some areas. Good, 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 good. Boosting up the line weight helps sell the form, right? It pushes and pulls different things without having to shade them, and it helps push this bottom lip area if I don't mess it up. There we go. So you're giving light and shadow without actually putting light and shadow in. That diversity of line weight, very important, especially in line drawing. You know, pressure. The harder I push, the wider the line, right? And when you have overlapping forms, such as this brow right here, and I want to show the brow forward, I give it a thicker line on the bottom, and look, it pushes that brow forward. And the same thing with some of these items on the bottom here. I want to go ahead and push those out a little bit more in terms of their line weight to help bring them forward and push some of those other items back. Right? So here's a really good example. So it goes thin because it's on top, and then we have, it goes into a crease, and then it goes thin again. So it's thicker right there in the crease. The same thing happens. We'll go thin, and then we'll press hard, overlapping form, and I go thin and then thick on the bottom. Again, that gives variation of line weight. That helps define that form a little bit better as being on top. Because as we all know, it's better on top of the drawing. Of the line. Okay. All right, so now here again, we'll go here because there's you got that thin skin flap that comes around. So it's going to be thicker right here. and it's thin, and then it gets really thick right here. Okay. Here, thick. All right. And then thick on the bottom. Because he's thick. All right. They got that neck. So I'm going to give him some freckles here and there on his cheek. Some little skin anomalage. You see I'm lifting my hand to, again, show balance. I'm trying to get balance, big, small. I don't want to have one side too thick with the amount of dots. Okay. I'll give him some, just a hint of eyebrows, not overdoing it. Okay. And again, thicker, thinner. We're gonna do it again over here. We're gonna go thinner, and then we're gonna go thicker, and then thinner. Okay. All right. I don't know if I have time today to color it in. Might put you guys on time lapse really quick, just so I can do a really quick color on it. Because I want to use my new markers. Look at all those lovelies. Use us! Okay, settle down. All right, so we're going to put you guys on time lapse, and we'll do a final wrap up at the end. Okay? Okay, so this is where we ended up. Obviously, I could sit here and blend forever, and I could also utilize some of the color pencils to go ahead and put in some of the highlights and stuff like that. But I just wanted to show you guys that in very short order, you can come up with a really great basis for a solid illustration. This would probably be similar to an underpainting, because then I would go back with Prisma pencils. And these things right here, these are fantastic for marker work. They're made by Koh-i-Noor. They're dry markers. And what happens is you put this down, you know, as your highlights and some of your hue shading, and you can come back with a marker blender, and it, you know, really puts that pigment down into the paper. So again, this is kind of my methodology that I utilize whenever I sit down and I do character work traditionally. And it's very similar to what I do whenever I work traditionally as well. You know, like some of these color flats that I put in, and I put a little bit of, you know, a darker purple, brownish purple pink. And then I'll go back with my color pencils and I'll put some of that hue in. This is going to be this particular illustration is just kind of a taste
of what I'm going to be offering here pretty soon after I get my store set up and everything, and I start doing tutorials for you guys, offering tutorials at a huge discounted rate. I'm not here to pitch you and sell you, but there is going to be stuff like this available to you guys once I get my store set up. And a typical tutorial, probably 3 to 4 parts, showing you the different stages of and the materials and the markers and the brands and my methodology and how I create marker illustrations for commercial use. And the tutorials will be $2 to $3 max, and you'll be able to download them and view them at your leisure. So hopefully I'll get those out to you as soon as possible. And this, like I said, this is just part of a huge kind of a learning program that I'm developing for you guys. I'll still continue to do YouTube videos, trust me. But, I need to offset the balance of how much time and effort I've put into this channel. Gosh, since 2014, I've been doing this since 2014. So anyway, hopefully you guys like this illustration. Again, this is kind of the methodology that I use whenever I use markers. This isn't the only methodology. Like over here, it shows my traveling sketchbook that I use watercolor in. So that's also going to be something that I'll show you guys in the future. So hopefully you liked today's video. And you'll stick around for a lot more. I just got contacted by a new company to do a review of one of their products. It's kind of like a quick key type situation. So definitely look for that, hopefully by next week. Lots happening on the channel, lots happening in the professional side of things. There's sometimes, guys, that I wish I could show you some of the stuff that I do professionally. The companies that I work for, Universal, Warner Brothers, Disney, they all have solid NDAs, non-disclose. And even though I would love to show you guys some of the stuff, I can't show you the end process. I can only show you the final product. And if there's ever a moment, whenever I have the opportunity to show you after the fact, I will definitely show you after the fact. So hopefully you guys like this today. It was a little bit longer. I understand long's always not good. Sometimes you want a 15-minute video, but I'm a firm believer in teaching you from start to finish. I just don't want to sit down and, oh, here's a review of a marker. I'm not going to use it. Or here's how I draw a face. I'm not going to show you how I did it, and I'm not going to show you how I ink it or color it. I want to show you a process to help you guys, in your journey as an artist. It's important for me, whenever I started this channel, I was like, I saw so many different channels out there, and some have gotten to great success way faster than I have. But I just want to give you guys what you need as a professional, and from a professional's viewpoint, what works. It works for me, and hopefully it'll work for you. So thank you guys, and we'll see you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye.